Okay. Sorry. Achilles is keeping us up talking about this thing like called Chaos or something. Hi, I'm Ellie Warnick and I will be presenting to you the Ancient Olympics. Now there are many myths of how the Olympics came to be. The main one is that it is a religious festival for Zeus. Zeus is the king of all the gods and goddesses, and so us, being his children, would like to please Zeus because he brings good crops, good fortune, and posterity. To help you guys really come to terms with what I'm talking about here, I created this timeline. Now, as you can see, it starts with the first ever recorded Olympics in 776 BC. At least that's the first one you guys know of. For all you know, we could have been doing it for much longer. Then, coming to 490 BC, we have the first marathon. And the reason we called it the first marathon is because we had someone run 42 kilometers from Sparta to Athens to proclaim the news of the great Greek victory. And then, for some reason, in 394 BC, in 394 CE, the Olympics were banned. It was because this Roman emperor decided that the games were more of a pagan event. I mean, how realistic is that really? Not really. Then we come to 1896, a little bit closer to the time we're at now. And finally, you guys decided to bring them back. The first modern Olympic Games were then born. Then you guys finally decided to add women into this, which is probably the greatest decision we've ever had. So thank goodness for the 1900s. The most important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. This quote goes nice along with the Olympics. It says that even though winning is such a nice perk and you get the fame and the glory, it is also nice to be able to have something to do, which is what these things were mostly for, to give people things to do. One thing you might recognize in this modern time Olympics is the Olympic torch. Although it is not done in the ancient Olympics, you guys brought a great deal of it to now. You might recognize it being lit at the beginning of every Olympics and it continually burns throughout the whole time. It symbolizes unity among different nations of the world, speed, perfection, and strength, the development of sportsmanship, and then continuity between ancient and modern games. Wow, that's awful form. Anyway, some of the events that we had, which, man, I wish you could see them. They were a sight to see. Long jump. Although it's different from what you have now, when we did it, the athletes would hold weights in their hands, and when they were going to jump, they would throw them up in front of their heads, and when they wanted to land, they would drop them really fast. Boxing, they would wrap their hands in leather, and at some point they started adding metal to their knuckles. And the only way it would end is if the opponent would give up or they were knocked out. Next we have wrestling. And they would fight with their bare hands, and different than what today's wrestling might be, they had to get to their opponents on their backs 3 separate times, not just hold it for 3 seconds. And if boxing and wrestling weren't enough, we have something called a pankration. And it's a combination of wrestling and boxing. Here's a more in-depth look at some of the events that we would hold in our Olympics. We have running, discus, chariot racing, and my personal favorite, and something that makes everyone else run for the hills, javelin. For running, you'd have many different competitors race to a finish line, much like you do now. In discus, they would have a disc that was equivalent to what weight. It was a percentage off of your weight. So it's not like how it is nowadays when the discus was one flat size for males and females. And next we have chariot racing. And the chariot racing could be with 2 horses or 4 horses. And the best thing about it is that, have you seen horses run? Man, they are fast. So this was quite an adventure to watch. And now, coming to this final event, it is personally my favorite, and if you happen to do this event, no one will ever mess with you ever. I promise. Javelin used to be made with wood and pointed at one end. Nowadays, it is made out of titanium and pointed on both ends, with a grip in the middle. In the olden days, they'd wrap a piece of leather around the javelin, and they'd hook their 2 fingers through it and throw it that way. While nowadays, you would hold the grip in your hand, and you'd run on a runway, and then end up throwing it. Both of the same type of things, but they're executed very differently. This also happens to be my favorite because I currently throw this at SVU right now, but that's on another level. That's on another note. At the Olympic Games, it isn't the most beautiful or strongest or a crown, but those who compete. This is important because it shows how important sportsmanship is to even those in the ancient times. And thank goodness we decided to keep that, because look what it's done for you now. Been able to help you relax and just have a great old time with everyone around you. Thought I was dead, didn't you? Well, welcome to the funeral games. Now, the funeral games were held in honor of people that died. Achilles happened to hold one of these for Patroclus, which was one of Achilles' personal comrades. Now, you know, Achilles didn't have many friends or people that super enjoyed him because he was really prideful and all about himself. So Achilles took Patroclus' death really personal and led him to holding a funeral games in his honor. The funeral games happen to have some events that are like those of the Olympics, such as chariot racing and running. And they would hold these specific events to honor those fallen soldiers or those that mean a lot to us. And they would sometimes turn these into annual events.